Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Off on Tangents. As you can see, we're still in our rooms, still quarantining, and doing our best to stay, or keep to social distancing measures. But yeah, we want to welcome you back to another episode of Off on Tangents. I'm Daniel Pomposette, as always. My co-host Jake Clifton here.
What's happening,
How are you,
guys?
Jake? How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm just chilling here on a beautiful day,
I know.
socially isolated.
Yeah, we
Can't complain.
yeah, yeah, we're recording from our homes, and we will continue to do so for quite some time, or whenever the coronavirus pandemic stops. But yeah, we wanted to do another episode. We're trying to produce as much content for you guys as much as possible. But we do have regular jobs and study schedules and
Yep,
degrees to
uni's
get to.
back on top of me as per usual.
Yeah,
Trying to
yeah,
go get my shit together.
yeah. So yeah, we'll continue to produce this content. But first things first,
Mm,
from our last episode, we wanted to just acknowledge that in the NBA community and in basketball in general, the death of Carl Anthony Towns' mother, Jacqueline Cruz, who
yeah,
unfortunately passed away on April the 13th, 2020. She was diagnosed on, well, to to the best of our knowledge, on March 25th, 2020, when Carl Anthony Towns put up an Instagram post saying that his mum was diagnosed with coronavirus, and so she was hospitalized for a couple of weeks, and unfortunately we found out that the news on April the 13th that she passed away. So our thoughts and our praise and just acknowledgements with Carl at the moment. He's obviously going
yeah,
through a tough time. Did you want to?
yeah.
Did you have any comments, Jake, about
Oh
that?
no,
Or
just agreeing with you and giving our prayers to the family as well, Carl Anthony Towns and everyone who's related to the incident, and
sure.
I guess everyone in general who's been affected by the coronavirus, because it's had quite a big death toll already in America.
Yep.
We've been pretty blessed here in Australia to be. I don't know if it's the smaller population size or the healthcare or something. I don't know what we're doing better, but we're not being as affected over here as they are over there. So just yeah, thoughts and prayers going out to everyone who's suffering with it at the moment. Anyone who's got a family member who is not doing well or is suffering
Yep.
with the disease at the moment, we're thinking of you. And yeah, I hope everyone who's not got the disease or not having any issues, I hope you're doing well to keep yourself safe and keep yourself isolated,
Sure.
and keep your families and friends around you safe as well. So, yeah,
Yeah.
very very tragic news to hear about that for Carl, and
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully there's not too much more within the NBA community getting affected like that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, perfect. Well, yeah. Look, as always, guys, stay safe out there. Just practice your social distancing, and
mm,
we hope we get past this, and hopefully, I know sports is not the highest priority, but we would like to have the sports come
we
back so
all
we can
miss
have
it,
something
don't
to
we?
talk about.
Yeah,
Yeah, we all miss it. So,
everyone's
uh,
struggling.
yeah. So, yeah, look, on that note, we'll end it there, just on that. But we this podcast is going to be about the Last Dance, and as most people know, on Netflix, the Chicago Bulls, mainly, well, when I say Chicago Bulls, it's mainly Michael Jordan, but the Chicago Bulls really let the film camera crews into their last season, and pretty much made a documentary about the whole 1997-98 NBA season, and what transpired from that. Now, it's such a coincidence that you want to release it during this pandemic, release the documentary during this pandemic when there's no basketball on. So it was good timing in that part, releasing this documentary. And you know, I heard an article. I don't know if you heard about this, Jake, but Michael Jordan was actually planning to release this document after the Cavs won their championship in 2016.
Yeah, or I heard that I think he gave, no, I think he gave the permission for the footage to be used after I read that article as well, actually. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, that's a weird, I don't know what the coincidence with that is. Maybe it was, LeBron's getting too close to my throne. Better release this. Better release this footage now.
Exactly. It was sort of like a jab. Hey, it was sort of like a jab to LeBron to say, hey, I'm starting to take your throne, but let me remind you, it was sort of petty in a way,
It's like
to do that.
He wants a spotlight back on him now. It's like, like he's winning another championship with a different team. Maybe I need to release my footage now and get the spotlight back on me.
Yeah.
Not that he really needs more of a spotlight, Michael Jordan, but
well,
it's a weird weird time if for conspiracists to jump on that, then it's only expected, right?
Well, it goes before we get into the content. Can I ask you, why do you think that Michael and the Bulls? Well, really, it was just Michael because he was the overarching authority to release the documentary. Why do you think he chose to release it now and not as soon as they won the championship back in 1998? What do you think?
I don't know, mate. I think it could have something to do with the tension that was built up throughout the season, because it looks like from the first two episodes, we've already gotten a little bit of a taste of how much tension there was building up in the team. Maybe there was a bit of a, I don't know, a disagreement between the people involved in the filmings. Maybe some people didn't want it to get out because they thought maybe it would look bad. I know Michael, in some of the things I've read, has been seems as if he's almost concerned that he might look like a bit of a bad guy with how he comes across in the footage, so I don't know what the reason is, other than maybe he was just holding on to it to be like, as soon as someone else started to come up and get big, he could be like, oh, here, remember when I was getting my 6th championship, I don't know, there could be a number of reasons, but I would say it could have to do with the tension that was experienced in the locker room when they were filming, and maybe no one could agree and be like, yeah, I want this release. Maybe Jerry Krause was hesitant as well for how he looked in the footage, and I think maybe everyone comes across as it's hard for anyone to look good when there's tension, so maybe everyone was a bit hesitant to get it released.
Definitely.
But then maybe with time, it gets to a point where they're just like, oh, well, the overall, it's more important to get this out there to give the world a look into what was happening than it is to worry about my image. And I don't know, maybe that could be why.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting, take on that. Like the timing of it. Okay, going off that, do you think that was good? It's good timing now to release it, given that we have a hiatus, I suppose.
Yeah, perfect timing now. Like, in saying that, like, they couldn't have planned it to be released exactly at this time. Surely, maybe it just ended up working out to be a perfect time to release it without the basketball. Surely, if he'd given the permission for the footage to be used at the end of the Cavs championship, that was in 2016. So, 4 years ago, almost this year. So, would have been probably getting to a point in time where we'd be expecting it to be released. Anyway, I just think it happened to fall into a perfect time because of the state that we're in. We're not getting to our feel of basketball that we'd usually be getting. We'd usually be getting pretty excited and anticipating playoffs at the moment. So I think this is giving us a little bit of a a release in that regard. It's not as fresh, but it's exciting. It was exciting for me watching it, at least. I know most people probably excited, but it's just an exciting feeling again of like, I don't know, I always love watching videos that look back on the championship teams for the year. I know the NFL does one every year for the team that wins, and I always love seeing the inside looks of the locker rooms and that type of thing. So it is a good timing to get it out here now, but whether that was planned is another thing. I think maybe it just fell perfectly into place to give us some release.
Okay. Well, let's start with episode 1. For the viewers, there's only been 2 episodes so far that's been released. They're going to release it every week, I think. But really, the start of the video, begins with Michael Jordan sitting on a bench, and he must be in his house. He's looking out to some view, and he ends up smoking a cigar. And that's just how
the
how
longest
much,
motherfucking cigar you ever seen in your life.
The big ass motherfucking cigar,
the
right?
Fuck off cigar right there, bro. I was like, oh shit, this guy's overcompensating for something.
Yeah,
with the size of this cigar.
It looks like he was just like, I'm the boss, like I'm a boss man. Yeah, it's just like, man. And it starts off with Michael just giving his take on the 97-98 season. And then it begins really into his younger days, where he grew up in a place called Wilmington, North Carolina. He was actually born in New York, but then grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina, and to Dolores Jordan and James Jordan, who sadly passed away a long time ago. But yeah, so it really goes into how his upbringing was done. He has 4 other siblings, I think, and in which he sort of developed basketball at a very young age, playing with his brothers, and so going into high school, he was actually one of the top prospects in high school, but he wasn't the main one, right? He wasn't the main guy. And you could see he was his going into college at North Carolina, the North Carolina Tar Heels. His coach there, his then coach, I think it was Dean Smith. I think Dean Smith was his coach. Groomed Michael, like he nurtured and looked after Michael, and sort of started developing that winning mentality in high school, because at this point Michael wasn't like a beast. He wasn't like the beast that he was in Chicago. He was still developing that. He was still like quite timid.
He had the raw talent, but he wasn't. He was nowhere near what he needed to be the best player in the world. Right. So
and at that time, when you remember, the 80s and 90s were all about centers and big men, and here we have this 6'5" guard from North Carolina, carrying the team, and he ended up being the main guy in the team. Him and a fellow player, James Worthy, who actually played for the Lakers and won a number of championships. They played in the same college, which I didn't know from watching the documentary. And it turns out they won the 82 NCAA championship against Georgetown.
That wasn't the first year that he was in North Carolina.
I can't remember.
Jordan?
It could have been first or second year. First year. You're right, first year, because the second year I think they won it, and then in '84 he entered the draft. So, so that's where. But you can see that's where Michael started like getting confident, and so as he enters the draft in 1984. He ends up being picked third, behind Hakeem Olajuwon. He was number 1, and Sam Bowie, who you never heard of, number 2 to the Portland Trailblazers. He ended up becoming a bust. So,
spewing if you're a Portland fan.
Yeah, exactly.
Even I guess the Rockets did all right with Hakeem. They got the 2 championships and Michael was out of there. But
Yeah,
man, even as a Rockets fan, you got to think to yourself, we had a chance to get Michael Jordan on
yeah,
our team, and it was
yeah,
sheerly the fact that we believed in. It was a center-driven league that they didn't go
yeah,
for him. It's
exactly.
crazy.
And so at that
You wouldn't
point
have that
now,
issue today, would you? Like the center, no one wants centers nowadays. So
nah,
Jordan would be getting drafted first every time at this point in time, but
yeah,
just
you're
back
right.
then.
Yeah, to your point, like you can see how it's like the opposite effect has happened now,
Mm,
and that's just with time and the era that we play in now,
yeah.
and so like going back into MJ's draft, he ends up being drafted to the Bulls. Uh, the previous general manager actually, that was probably one of the greatest moves that he ever made. It wasn't Jerry Krause that picked Michael, because Jerry Krause didn't become manager until 1985. And so,
The year after Michael
yeah,
Jordan was drafted.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the Chicago Bulls up until this point were notorious, or were a pretty average team. They never had much success in the league.
yeah,
So they were sort of getting to a point where they were almost looking like they would have to disband if they didn't see any success. Or
correct.
so it came at a good time, the drafting of Michael Jordan, didn't it?
Yeah, and so like, um, and so yeah, you're right. The drafting came at a good time for them, because you can see in the crowds, like they were so irrelevant in Chicago. The White Sox, the Bears had attention. The
Mm.
Chicago Bears, it was, they were like third, before Michael came in, and you know, do you remember that part in the documentary where Michael, he said that he really came out of his shell in his third game against the Milwaukee Bucks. Do you
Mm.
remember that? The
Yeah,
Milwaukee,
he scored like 43 points or something like that.
yeah, yeah, and from and in that game he just teared everyone up in his rookie season, um, and ended up winning the Rookie of the Year. Yeah, so he averaged like 28 points, six rebounds and like 5 assists or something like that. And in his from then on, like he just had that mentality, like if the winning
Yeah.
mentality, and then from then on, uh, yeah, it was just rockets go. And
Mm.
so now from that, it jumps from his upgrade, from his rookie year back to the 97-98 season. Now, talk to us, Jake, about the relationship between Jerry Krause and Phil Jackson, and how that became a good relation, from a good relationship, started out as a good relationship, to one that pretty much ended in resentment, um, from watching the documentary.
Well, in the documentary, yeah, it seems like it jumps back to the 97, 98 season, and at that point, it's getting to the point in time where they need to be they need to start paying people, because I know that Phil Jackson's contract was up, and you had people like Scottie Pippen getting to the end of their contracts who were wildly underpaid as well, which we'll get to later. So yeah, obviously Phil Jackson being at the time the greatest coach, he'd won 5 championships already. So I think there was a bit of tension built with the contract situation, and I think Jerry Krause made it very clear. He did not. He almost makes it pretty clear that he didn't feel that it was that necessary to get Phil Jackson back. That he had the opinion that the organization was like that. It was him and everyone in the office that were making the biggest difference. And I think there was just a bit of, I don't know the story maybe as well as you do, but it seems like the the contract negotiations and the lack of, I think the lack of credit that Phil, he probably felt he was receiving, and I guess Jerry Krause probably felt the same way, that he wasn't getting enough credit,
Yeah.
and it probably just built the tension between them, because they're both feeling this thought of, they're both obviously attributing to a winning team,
Yeah.
and neither one of them feels like they're getting the credit that they deserve, and Phil specifically isn't being compensated what he should be. So and I think that was a pretty common theme in the Bulls team. They found a lot of success, but in doing so, there were, like, other than Michael Jordan, who was paid abundantly well at the time, more than any other player in the world, which he obviously deserved. But the rest of the Bulls team, like, you had like this almost the second best player in the world being paid as one, like the 122nd highest
Yeah.
paid player in the world. So I think there was a bit of an issue with how the Bulls valued the Bulls organization valued their players and coach, obviously.
Yeah.
In this situation, they obviously felt that, oh well, if we don't have to pay these guys, if they don't like it, we'll just build a new team. And
Yeah.
I think that's what was happening, why this whole series takes place at the end of that dynasty and is called The Last Dance, is this was all happening at that time. And it was said to Phil from Jerry Krause at the beginning in this first episode. He's blatantly says to him, "This is going to be your last year as a coach," which, like, who says that to a coach, man? Like, who
Yeah.
says that to someone who's just brought you 5 championship, is about to bring you your 6th championship, preemptively knowing that he's not going to have a job there next year? It's a bit mind-boggling, really, that the nerve, I guess, that
Yeah.
Jerry Krause seemed to have. And he obviously it was obviously he had a big ego, or, as you were saying to me before, little man syndrome, where he obviously had to stand up for himself and constantly fight to get his. Um, it obviously just led to this resentment inside him that just completely blinded his ability to do what was best for the team at that point. They saw the success, and then it got to a point where they were more concerned about the individual, getting the individual praise that they deserved, than they were about continuing the greatness that they were going
Yeah.
through. At
Yeah.
that point in time, it just, yeah, it's not about the organization as a whole. It's about the individuals, and everyone wants to be the one that's like, well, I did this. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, everyone has a part to play in it, but Michael Jordan's the one that's out there winning you those championships. Phil Jackson's out there coaching the team, and you know, as a general manager, you're not the one that's actually going out there and winning a championship. So
Yeah.
yeah, the whole situation is pretty mind-boggling to me, that a general manager could let his own ego get in the way of the greatest, or what was the greatest team of all time at that point. So
So, well, it's a good, like, to summarize what you've just said. Like, you raise like a very fucking good point about egos, right? It really comes down to people having different views of what at the time, at that very point in time, what on how the direction of the team were going, team of the Bulls were heading. Sorry, in 1997, before that championship started, right? Jerry Krause has this mindset. He's starting to be in rebuilding mode. Now, the reason why he started to become in rebuilding mode was because all the players and the Bulls players were reaching the end of their careers. Yeah, Michael Jordan at that point was 34, 35. Scottie, similarly, 33. Steve Kerr, uh, Bill Wennington, Dennis Rodman. Yeah, they're all in their 30s at this point. Now, Jerry Krause is starting to think rebuild. Like, we got to start getting new coach, replace the players, and unfortunately enough, most of them signed back on a 1-year deal. Now, He's of that mindset. Phil Jackson is of the mindset. Well, I've just won you all these championships. I want to be compensated for it.
Mm.
Sign me up. Sign me up. And so I think it came down to one, egos. To your point, Jerry Krause having an ego, didn't want to pay Phil Jackson what he wanted. Secondly, yeah, like look, right now, Jerry Krause has sadly passed away, and he can't defend himself. But this documentary does like discredit a lot of his work and makes him look like, it paints him out like he was the bad guy. And unfortunately, yeah, like I said, he can't defend himself or the allegations that are made here, but it definitely doesn't help his legacy. And so
well, maybe that goes back to what you were saying earlier about maybe that could have to do with why they waited till now to release the documentary. Well, he doesn't have the ability to stand up and be like, wait a minute, no, this isn't how it happened. And obviously, everyone's going to have their own recount of exactly what happened, because it's all going to be, everyone has their way of seeing it because this is how they felt when it happened, or like, you know what I mean? So yeah, I doubt that that's why they specifically held it off, but it does help their side of the story if the person that they're against in the thing is not there. So yeah, anyway, go on. So
no, I was just going to say another point that you raised, and you raised really well, was the recognition part, being recognized. Who should get the recognition for this? And it comes down to that whole organization. Like that there's that saying where the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, or whatever. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I think that's what the.
Yeah, I know. I know what you mean.
And all those parts have to work together, right? When Jerry Krause made the comments about it's not the players and the coaches that win championships, it's the organization. Talk to us about the mindset. How did Michael Jordan react to that, based on the documentary?
Well, he obviously took offense to it because he would have a completely different perspective of what wins championships, and so yeah, in the documentary, he takes offense to that, as he should. But I think it also is pretty apparent that it comes down to how you perceive what's said, because Jerry Krause comes back and says it's not really how I intended it to be taken. I'm not saying that he wasn't saying that the players don't win the championship, but he's saying that it takes everyone within the organization. So him, Phil Jackson, and the players as a whole. And I think it's easy to misinterpret that if you're in the middle of this tension in this battle with this guy and he's not paying you, and you hear him say, oh, the organization wins the championships, not the players. It's easy to take that and be like, wait a minute, what the hell are you talking about? We won you this championship.
Exactly.
And
right.
I don't blame the Phil and any of the players who took offense to that. I don't blame them for it, but I can also see Jerry Krause's side in that he probably said it out of being like, he probably had someone say something along the lines that was suggesting that he didn't have much to do with it, or maybe, I don't know what prompted him to say it, but he was clearly just trying to make a point, saying, look, like, we all work together to get this to happen. Everyone plays an important role, from the general managers, from the office, all the way down to the coach, down to the players. Everyone, you all need to be on the same page to win a championship and to get to that level to play it. So you can't just put together a team as a general manager and win a championship if you just put together the best team, because the players have to work for you and have to get you that championship. Just like as a player, you can't just be the best player in the world, Michael Jordan, and just go out there and win yourself a championship. You need to have a general manager putting together the pieces that you need, giving you the support that you need, the players, the coaching staff, pretty much everything, making the deals, making the trades, and all that stuff. So everything works together to win the championship. And I think he was misinterpreted in that case. and it probably wasn't a great time, and you just shouldn't say things like that to the media, I guess,
Yeah.
in any situation. But yeah, I'd see the player's perspective, but also I think what this it's going to be challenging for this documentary to not come across as too one-sided in that regard, because obviously, as you said, Jerry can't defend himself, and um, I don't think the documentary should just be based on attacking Jerry. I think hopefully it takes a different path from there, and it
Yeah.
goes to like someone, because there are people in the interview that do in the documentary that do sort of defend Jerry Krause's actions. But yeah, it will be interesting to see if it just goes on shitting on Jerry Krause,
Yeah.
or whether it goes down a different line. But,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
I do think that everyone plays a big role in winning a championship, and
yeah.
at the end of the day, you're best off communicating within your locker room and
Correct.
not doing that with media.
Yeah. Keep it indoors. You're right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
never goes well, does it?
Nah. No. Never. Well, in episode 2 is the central figure in episode 2 is Scottie Pippen. Right now,
Yeah.
Scottie Pippen at the time second best player in the world. The Robin to Michael Jordan's Batman, and really one of the central figures in like winning these championships. Yeah, there'd be Michael Jordan even says this. There would be no Michael Jordan without Scottie Pippen. Yeah,
Yeah, he says it
Ba-
in one of the episodes already
yeah,
in the documentary, which
yeah,
I'm glad to hear him say,
yeah.
because it's true.
Now Scotty, had a tough upbringing. Being a black person in the Midwest, growing up in Arkansas. Very big family. I think it was a family of 12, and
Mm.
his dad suffered a stroke early on, and his older brother ended up in a wheelchair. If you recall
He
from
said
the
two
interview.
members, so his father and his brother were both in wheelchairs
Yeah,
when growing up, which is
exactly.
yeah,
Now,
be tough on a family for sure.
yeah,
Having
yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, why I mention that is because what are the points that I'm about to raise, uh, and the events in 1991. So basically, he goes to Central Arkansas as his college, and he was quite a short person. Like he did he you, I remember his older brother saying he had a growth spurt, or one of his best friends said he had a growth spurt, and he ended up like from 5'10" or 5'11", he ended up being 6'5". And then when he entered the draft, he ended up being in 6'7", 6'7", so it's about 2 meters. And he enters the draft in 1987, being the 5th pick. Now, the Seattle Supersonics pick Scotty uh, to play for their franchise, but then Jerry Krause, again, one of the moves that he makes was trading for that 5th pick, because they felt because during that time it was only just Michael Jordan. Really, it was just Michael Jordan carrying the team, and they couldn't get past the first or second round. They couldn't get past the Celtics teams that had Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Danny Ainge. Like, they couldn't get past that team. And then
well, yeah, that was the year before they drafted Pippen. In the documentary, it shows it goes on how they were actually the general managers actually wanted them to miss out on the playoffs that year so they could
yeah,
get a better draft pick. But Michael
yeah,
Jordan didn't didn't want to go with that type of
yeah,
mentality, and willed his team into the playoffs.
that's
And
right.
yeah, that was just again another, I guess, something that built a bit more of tension
Yeah,
between maybe Jerry Krause and Michael Jordan, showing like at that point in time where they didn't disagree on that in that aspect. But at the end of the day, they ended up getting Scottie Pippen anyway. So it does go to show the important role that Jerry played in the team. Without the moves that he made, they wouldn't have had Scottie Pippen, and he had to trade up to get to that position. So even with Michael going out of his way to be like, no, I'm gonna win these games, and who cares about your draft pick? Jerry was still able to put together a trade package and move up in the draft and get players and put them around Michael that allowed him to win. So it just goes to show the important role that the general manager had and why he does deserve recognition as well.
So like you're right. Jerry makes this move. If it wasn't, like we'll get to that issue because that's an important issue you raised. So with Scottie, they end up picking him 5th pick, and basically they couldn't get past the Pistons, the bad boy Pistons. But in 1991, which is why I raised Scottie's family, was Scottie injured his back. He had a back injury, and at that point, the Bulls front office were thinking, "Oh, like it's long term. Is this going to be a good contract if we, pay Scottie a big sum of money here?" Yeah, and so basically, the Bulls front office shorted him and offered him 7 years for $18 million. Right now, at this point,
crazy
Scottie's,
when you think about like how much people make in a year nowadays. A player of Scottie Pippen's caliber would be at least making more than that a year in this day and age. But
I reckon he'd be making $30 million a year.
Yeah, at least. Shocking, really.
And so at this point, Scottie's thinking, man, like I've just had a back injury. I need to feed my family. Yeah. He's like 4 or 5 years into the league now. I was worried. He was worried about his family, and he says that
contract's just coming up at this point.
And so the Bulls offered him that 7-year contract, and he accepted. Now, the documentary, throughout this whole documentary, they view Scottie as like a victim here, in it. Now, and I'm not saying like, Scottie should take some responsibility for this as well, yeah. But his mentality at the time was he needed to look after his family, and so he wanted to sign the contract. Yeah. Now, the Bulls owner at the time, Jerry Reinsdorf, said, "Look, we even told you don't sign this contract, but he ended up signing the contract, and so and Jerry Reinsdorf said, like, look, you can't come back and blame us for signing this contract. Now, fast forward to 97, 98, and this is where Scottie starts getting resentful. Now, all I'm hearing is okay, why did you sign the contract, Scottie? Like, you still have a part to play in this. Now,
like he could have easily held off on signing that contract and see what other teams were willing to offer him at the time. Like, I know he had wanted to pay his family, but you can't really resent anyone else for you signing that contract.
Yeah. You signed that contract at the end of the day. Maybe that's the lawyer in me, but at the end of the day, you signed it. So what's your
decisions?
Yeah, what are your thoughts on him signing that at that point in time and going, like, being the 122nd?
Turning around.
Yeah.
Well, my thoughts on the whole thing is, obviously, he's underpaid. Straight up, it's disrespectful that he was getting paid so little for what he was doing. He brought in 5 championships. At some point, at that point, once that he made a mistake with that contract, but once that's up, they should be compensating him with a big contract at the end of. Even though he can't resent them for that contract being so small, I would say he can resent them after that point if they don't ever pay him dividends. It's like they're just like, well, we used you, we got 6 championships out of you, we barely paid you, we paid you 17 million over the entire course of that time where you gave me 6 championships, and now you're old and we're just going to let you go into veteran minimums on other teams. Like, that to me is pretty disrespectful.
Yep.
So I think he did deserve to be paid more. He obviously made the mistake of signing the contract, and I think in the documentary it sort of gives a bit of a it shows that at that point in time the contract that he signed wasn't actually that bad. It was only because of the flux in or the increase in revenue that started happening after that, and the increase in the players contracts that end up making Scotty's making his contract look so small in the scheme of things, because all the other players' contracts inflated after he'd signed it. So it was a bit unfortunate for Scotty, and maybe the team at that point could have rectified that in some way. They could have made a slight change to the contract or something after seeing that everyone else was. But obviously, from a team standpoint, they're not going to do that. So I can see Scotty. I can see why he built up the resentment, because he's like, I'm doing this, I should be getting paid this, and he can see Michael Jordan's being paid. At that point, he was getting paid. I think Michael's contract was over 30 million. So. And that's a year. So Michael Jordan's earning more a year than Scottie Pippen was earning over the entirety of his contract with the Bulls, and more than double a year. So it is. I can see why Scottie became resentful at that point, and it is a bit ridiculous to see like the amount that players get paid nowadays. They're getting paid more than that per year to do way less than Scotty was, like, to be bench players. Bench players that get paid more than that. So.
Yeah, well, fast forward to the 97-98 season, and at this point now, Scotty is like, man, I need to get paid. I want to get paid. Yeah. Again, it comes down to this ego thing. Comes down. All right, I gave you 5 championships. I want to get paid, right? And he's growing very resentful because of what he did, what he eventually signed back in 91. Now, at this point, the relationship between Jerry Krause and Scottie Pippen is starting to get really, really feisty and resentful. And there's a lot of animosity here. Now, you I don't know if you recall, in the second episode, they actually started trading insults on the team bus, where and you know, accounts from stories from the other players. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty.
Yeah, it was like Scotty was yelling out at Jerry, who was at the front of the bus, and he was just abusing him from the back of the bus or something like that.
Exactly. And now
it's the type of stuff that you'd see in a school, on a school bus with someone bullying another kid. It sort of had that type of feel to it, like a school kid bully on a school bus type of feel. It wasn't very mature of Scottie Pippen. He sort of became a little bit childish in that regard.
But you can see that resentment was starting to build up in him.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, there was an elephant in the room, and they weren't willing to fucking talk about it. But it just came. Yeah, but we knew it was there, and we knew it was it was starting to come up. And that's a big part of why he chose to delay surgery on his ankle. Was the biggest fuck you to the Bulls front office, to say, if you don't pay me,
enjoy himself in summer.
Yeah, I'm going to enjoy myself in summer. I'm going to delay this until the start of the season. Now, at that point, there was a little snippet about the start of the season for the Bulls, where in the month of November, December, they were subpar 500 in the month of November, and Michael Jordan. That's where you see Michael Jordan begin to cuss out all his teammates. and his recent comments about, oh man, this documentary is going to make it out like I'm the bad guy. Now, you know, what are your thoughts on him reacting to the situation with Scottie? Just Michael Jordan himself, he's starting to cuss out teammates and all that.
Yeah.
Do you think that was a reaction to Scottie not being there, or do you think has that always been in Michael Jordan's mentality to
I think at that point
better his
specifically,
teammates?
he's probably a lot more used to winning in
Yeah.
that situation. So to be at the beginning of a season where things aren't going your way, there was probably a little bit of frustration with him built up towards Scottie Pippen because he says it in the documentary. He's like, at that point, that's when Scottie fucked up. Like
Yeah.
he took his problems with Jerry and took it out and almost he affected the team and how
Yeah,
the
correct.
team would I'm sure Michael up until that point was probably on Scottie's side. He probably agreed with him. You're not being paid enough. But at that point, what Scottie was doing started impacting his team, and it probably frustrated him a lot. It's just interesting to me, these situations. It's almost like what you're saying, where the Scottie is building up resentment, and he probably wasn't talking. He was just being petty and calling Jerry Krause names and doing that type of stuff. There's almost this idea like they don't, as you said, they wouldn't flesh it out with each other, sit down and talk. No one to each other. They just sort of air out their feelings to the media. So Scottie's saying this to the media, and then Jerry Krause is saying this, and so the media sort of fuels these frustrations more, and it probably helped build up the resentment even more because then they're hearing what this guy said from the media, and then it probably builds up the resentment more. So then they go say something else to the media, and it fuels these fights. So I think, I'm going back to what you said with Jordan. It's fair that he got frustrated. I don't know too much the extent to what he. I think the next few episodes we might see a bit more of how frustrated he gets and how much he takes it out on the teammates.
Yeah.
But I don't think that that's something that's not been done by many other players before. Like I've seen footage of Kobe cussing out teammates in training practice and getting frustrated. And there's this one footage of him telling off this guy every time he touches him. He's like, "Get your hands off me! Like, get your hands off me!" Like that type of stuff, I think, just happens when you're in a competitive sport, and when you're as competitive as someone like Michael Jordan, when you're not meeting the expectations that you used to meeting every year, like previous year you won a championship, when you got mostly the same players, you're only missing Scottie Pippen at this point, and the rest of the team's not functioning. It would be pretty frustrating to watch, and like it wasn't like Michael Jordan wasn't performing still. He was still carrying the team. He just was missing that extra help from Scottie. So if anything, you'd hope that it would give him a bit of appreciation. At that point, he would get more appreciation for Scottie Pippen and be like, well, wow, I really did need him for those 5 championships. We can't win games without him at the start of this season. And maybe it would just give him a bit more appreciation. But yeah, the situation as a whole was not handled well by anyone, I'd say, in the situation. Like, Scottie did the wrong thing. He should have gotten himself healed in the summertime and been back. He's still being paid millions of dollars at the end of the day. Like, as someone who's a professional athlete, you're getting paid to do it. That type of thing, you couldn't get away with it in this day, like these days. If you were sitting on an injury and didn't get it worked on before with ample time to heal before the season, then there's going to be people asking questions about that. So that was pretty dodgy on Scottie's behalf, but I can see the fear. I can feel the resentment that he was like. I know myself, being a petty type of person that I am, I'd do some similar shit like that if I was in his position. So I can't blame him.
Yeah. It just speaks to his mindset, at the time. Like, just he really didn't get the attention that he has deserved, and that didn't show in the money that he got.
Yeah.
But
he definitely didn't get the attention he deserved, did he?
Well, later on, he gets traded to Houston, gets signed for like a big amount of money. So in the
Mm.
end, he ended up getting like $100 million throughout his whole career. So,
Oh, good, yeah.
um, but at that point, it
Not
was
from the
after.
Bulls.
Yeah, not from the Bulls, man. Not from the Bulls. From Houston and Portland.
He's
So
obviously done well for himself since as well. Like
yeah,
it's not like that contract ruined his successfulness. But if you look at the net worth of Jordan and you compare it to Scottie Pippen, Jordan's up at like 2.3 billion, and
yeah,
Scottie Pippen's net worth is somewhere between 30 and 50 million.
yeah,
There's a massive difference in and obviously Michael was like more important to the winning, but
yeah,
at the end of the day, it is like to see that big of a difference in the amount two players are getting paid, and both of them are attributing to a championship team. I can just, I just, I can sympathise with Scotty in that regard,
yeah,
and I would probably not be I'd not be very happy if it was happening to me. If there were other players on my team even that were getting paid more than me. Like I think in his own team he was something like the fourth or fifth highest paid, so he wasn't even the second highest paid in his own team. So that's where the resentment would probably start building, is where you feel like you're attributing the most or second most, and you're not being compensated for it.
sure, yeah. So we'll really, yeah. Like on a final note, though, wrap it up to wrap it up. At the end of episode 2, where Michael Jordan says Scotty was being selfish to what we just talked about. Do you think that was fair for him to say that, given that he was getting paid
Yeah.
33 million? And
Oh, yeah. Actually, yeah.
and
I see what you mean. It's interesting to call Scotty selfish in that situation, isn't it? Because
yeah,
you get like you can guarantee if it was the other way around, if Scotty was the one making 30 million a year and
yeah,
Michael was the one making 17 over 7 years,
yeah,
you can guarantee there would be he would feel that he would be selfish too. At the end
yeah,
of the day, we're all selfish. We're all selfish to
yeah,
at our very core. We all want what's best for ourselves first at the end of the day. And
yeah,
I think that's why these issues come, because everyone's like, oh, I'm not being compensated. I'm attributing the most to this and I'm not being compensated, or I'm not being fairly compensated. At the end of the day, everyone's attributing here and everyone
yeah,
should be compensated equally. But that's not how it works. And that's a problem with our society as a whole. There's always one person who's getting paid the most. Like there's someone sitting at the top of the company getting paid billions to do not much work, and then all the people moving down do gradually more work but get paid less to do it,
yeah,
and always lead to resentment. The people end up being resented. I think Michael sitting at the top of that, it's very rich for him to say, "Oh, I was selfish of." He was million a year,
yeah,
and Scotty's not even being paid 2 million. Like it's not it is selfish on Scotty's behalf, and he's not taking into account the team. But to call someone else selfish in that situation for doing that is
yeah,
a little bit selfish yourself. Like Michael Jordan in that situation, he's only calling Scotty selfish because Scotty's actions affected
the team,
Michael
yeah,
and his team, because Michael wanted to keep winning. So in that regard, Michael's being selfish. Michael should have been like, no, you know what? Until they pay Scotty, I'm not gonna play either or some shit. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like he could have taken a stand for his teammate in that case, but instead he just decided, no, Scotty's being selfish. I would have hoped that Mark would be like, no, you know what, he deserves to be being paid as much as me. What he's doing right now is not it's not like obviously it's not a good way of going about it, but he only did that because of the situation he was in. So yes, Scottie Pippen made a bad decision, and it wasn't a very professional decision to sit out and do the surgery at the start of the
yeah,
season rather than the off season. But he should have probably received a bit more support from the players like Michael Jordan, who were getting more than him,
yeah,
miles more money, and he was attributing just as much. So I think he was selfish in that regard, but we're all selfish, and
yeah,
Michael was being selfish in that regard, he could have easily taken a pay cut, Michael Jordan, to his contract and given so that they could afford to pay Scottie more.
Yeah.
Things like that you see very common nowadays. So Michael could have easily done that, being the highest paid by far, and he's a billionaire. You know what I mean? Like it would have made no difference to him whatsoever taking a little slight pay cut so that Scottie could get more. So that, yeah, I think it's a bit hypocritical. Michael Jordan calling him out in the documentary for that reason. It just comes across as a bit funny, at least.
Very
Contradictory, yeah. So it comes across as rich, you know, like it's very easy for him to sit up there and say, oh, it's selfish of him to do that from his standpoint where he's sitting on that pile of cash, you know. Like, so, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, we'll wrap it up there. That was good take on that issue. We look forward to more episodes of The Last Dance. It's quite a fitting title.
Yeah.
It's quite a fitting title, you know, like last championship, and the shot. Everyone calls it the shot. And,
yeah, it's funny that like it's not just something that they've named now. At that time, Phil Jackson was calling that season The Last Dance. That's what makes it really like just it almost gives it a sort of magical, like a fairy tale finish sort of feeling, doesn't it? Like they went into this season knowing it was going to be their last dance, and then they got the job done in the end, and then they all went their separate ways. But they got that final. They had their last dance and got the championship. So it does feel very magical, doesn't it?
Well, we'll wrap it up there for our 8th episode. It's certainly been a good episode, been a good take, good discussion about the mindsets, just how egos can play a part in anything that you do, and even money, recognition. So there's a couple of important themes that have been raised there, like recognition, fame, money.
That's it. It's like at the end of the day, everyone wants to be recognized. Everyone wants to be paid and compensated. And what happens is in situations like this, when there's lots of money coming in and you're at the top of the world, everyone wants to be recognized, but only certain people get recognized. And obviously Jordan was the one he was changing the league, and he got all the recognition, and some other people didn't get as recognized as they should have. But yeah, we're all people, and we all want to be up there and accept and receive the type of accolades that we think we deserve. So
we'll leave it there for the episode. I thoroughly just enjoyed this discussion, and hopefully like when they release more episodes, we'll have more about this. And but for the viewers, that will be our theme for the next episodes, next podcasts.
So we have some basketball to comment on, eh?
yeah, exactly. But like with our hip hop segment, there's really been no new albums coming out aside from the Childish Gambino album. But I personally, for me, I've been listening to Big Sean, just some of his old stuff, because I actually watched Hot Ones, where he did the chicken wings,
the hot wings,
spicy wings, and like.
Oh, you've been digging that, eh? You love that shit.
Oh, I love it. I love the reaction to the bomb. The bomb sauce, the little one with the little nuclear reaction symbol. I'm like, shit.
Bro, Shaq disappointed me on that challenge, man. He bitched it.
He bitched it hard, eh? But Big Sean. How about you? Just still.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the type of person, bro, that when I like something, I overdo it. So at the moment, I'm just overdoing Cole, eh? Like, and to me, he's not being overdone because I can just listen to him all the time and I just don't get sick of it. But I'm sure Tash and the people around me are probably getting sick of hearing J. Cole, but I'm not.
Well, let's hope he releases that new album. Fuck, man.
Yeah.
What's it called? The
Man,
Fallout?
I'm excited. Huh?
Is it called the Fallout? Is it the Fallout?
The Fallout. I don't know. I
Have a
haven't
look.
actually read what the name is, but I know that I'm just getting excited because I feel like people should be releasing music at this point in time. Like, give us something to, feel the souls at the moment. We're all
Fall
dying
off.
inside.
Yeah. The fall
We
off.
need some fresh, yeah, fall off. Okay, yeah, cool. Well, yeah, I know Kendrick's coming like in the works at the moment too, so we should hopefully get some relief soon. With the Last Dance will give us a bit of relief, and then
Yeah.
hopefully some new albums will come out. And because yeah, we're looking like we're going to be locked up for a bit,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Definitely.
I keep hearing reports that we should be expecting to be self isolating for potentially up to 2 years or something. So
Okay.
it could be crazy. I'm hoping that's not the case because then you see reports of trials of vaccinations, and we could be hopefully looking past all this in 6 months. But
Yeah.
who knows, man?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll leave it there. Appreciate it, Jake. Much love, man. Stay safe.
yeah.
For
It's
all the
good chatting
viewers
to you,
out there,
man.
social distancing again. Just look after yourselves. Take care of your loved ones. And we'll be back with another episode with new content shortly. But yeah,
Yeah.
but from us, thanks guys. Take care. See ya.
Cheers, guys.